Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today, we will explore how slavery became an institution in the ancient world and what daily life was like for slaves. We'll discuss the role of slaves in ancient Rome, Greece, and Mesopotamia, their social status, living conditions, and their struggles for freedom. Let's dive in. Origins and beginnings of slavery. Slavery is one of the oldest social institutions in history and was a part of nearly every ancient civilization. So, who were the slaves? In ancient times, slavery often resulted from being captured in wars, unable to pay debts, or being punished for crimes. In the Roman Empire, captives taken in war were sold as slaves, while in Mesopotamia, early examples of slavery arose due to debt obligations. Slaves were at the bottom of the social hierarchy, but some could gain certain rights through the interest of their masters. For example, in Rome, slaves could eventually earn their freedom through a process called manumitio. Slavery in ancient Rome. The Roman Empire was one of the places where slavery was most widespread. Slaves in Rome worked in a variety of fields, from household chores and agriculture to gladiatorial combat and mining. Household slaves were considered the most valuable, while agricultural slaves often lived in poorer conditions. The Roman system of slavery was strict. However, some slaves could gain freedom through good behavior and service. Through the manumitio system, slaves could be freed. Additionally, some slaves could buy their freedom or have it granted by their masters. Of course, not all slaves had this opportunity. Gaining freedom was rare, and most slaves had to serve their entire lives. Slavery in ancient Greece. Slavery was also widespread in ancient Greece, but it functioned differently in various city-states like Athens and Sparta. In Athens, slaves worked in various areas, from household chores to agriculture. In Sparta, however, slaves, known as helots, made up the core of the labor force. Spartans kept helots in subjugation, allowing themselves to focus on military endeavors. One distinctive feature of slavery in Greece was the possibility for slaves to be educated and sometimes hold high-ranking positions. In Athens, some slaves worked as teachers, artisans, or traders. However, slaves still had a low social status, and their lives were very difficult. Slavery in Mesopotamia. In Mesopotamia, the system of slavery was enshrined in laws like the Code of Hammurabi. The code outlined the rights of slaves and their masters. Slaves typically worked in agriculture, the construction of ziggurats, and in the service of kings. Slaves in Mesopotamia often came from war captives or people who could not pay their debts, which could lead to slavery. Slaves worked primarily in large temples and government service. However, like in Rome, there were also opportunities for slaves in Mesopotamia to gain freedom. Some could buy their freedom or be granted it by their masters. The daily life of slaves. So, what was daily life like for slaves? Most slaves performed the tasks assigned to them by their masters, and their lives were entirely controlled by them. Household slaves were responsible for cooking, cleaning, and other domestic chores, while agricultural slaves worked in the fields to provide sustenance. The living conditions of slaves varied depending on their masters. Slaves in better situations, under kinder masters, often had better living standards, while those in more demanding environments lived in harsh conditions. Generally, slaves faced poor food, inadequate living spaces, and long working hours. Social perception and impacts. Slavery had a significant impact on the social structure of ancient societies. In both Rome and Greece, slaves were not considered part of the public, and their rights were only granted by their masters. Society viewed slaves purely as servants, and they formed the lowest class in society. However, in certain circumstances, slaves could gain favor in the eyes of their masters. In Rome, some slaves could gain freedom by building wealth or receiving their master's approval. Similarly, some Greek slaves were educated and held higher status positions. Conclusion. In the ancient world, slaves were the backbone of society, yet their lives were often filled with hardship. Although slavery existed in different forms across Rome, Greece, and Mesopotamia, slaves generally occupied low social positions, and their freedoms were limited. However, some slaves could eventually gain freedom through education or excellent service. Slavery was one of the most controversial issues in ancient societies, and over time, perspectives on the rights of slaves began to shift. From the ancient world to today, slavery continues to teach us important lessons about social inequality and human rights. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.